Hey guys, Joe DeMarco from the Crazy New York Driver Show. Today is Saturday, December 13th, 2025. Today's video is going to be a look back at Bergenfield Auto Parts, which used to be located right behind me on the corner. It was there before I was born, and it finally closed approximately the year, I guess it would have been late 90s or 2000. I'm going to show you pictures that I myself took when I was a kid in the 1970s, all the way up to the year 1994 when I finally left and opened my own place in Oradell. What I want to do is I want to give you, firstly, a little idea of what the location looks like right now before we go back in time. So firstly, as you can see on the corner, the lot is empty. That is where the junkyard used to be located. As I said, it was there for many years, and right next to it is where the Campbell Christie house now sits. I am standing in what used to be the Pizza Town lot. I'm sure many of you guys who live in the area went to Pizza Town many times over the years back in the day. I know I certainly did. Across the street over there was the old DNC Amico. In a minute or so, I'm going to spin the camera around so you can see everything, to get you acquainted with what it looks like right now. But I just wanted to start the video off with this little introduction. As I said, I remember the junkyard vividly. I pedaled in there on my bicycle when I was 12 years old in the 1970s, and I never stopped. Back in the 70s, all little boys loved cars. We all knew what kind of a car our parents had, or our friends had, our neighbors had. We knew everything about cars. Today, it ain't like that. You ask a kid what kind of a car his parents have, I don't think he could tell you the year and model. There's just no interest in it. And, you know, it's sad, but yeah. So anyway, let me show you briefly what the area looks like right now. And then I'm going to take you back in time. We're going to start in the 1970s. We're going to segue to the 80s and then to the mid 1990s. Okay? Let's have a look at the area now. I'm going to do my best not to shake the camera because I get really bent out of shape when people shake their cameras like it's a can of spray paint. But there's where the junkyard used to be, right on the corner here, Main Street and Hackensack Avenue. Boy, oh boy, I spent many, many days there. Okay, straight across on the end used to be Leonard Toyota, formerly Broadway Tire. The gas station was originally DNC Amico. It was run by Charlie LaMotta and David Chong. This storage facility right here used to be Innovation Luggage. Over here, in this empty lot right across the street there, see that empty lot where the grass is? There used to be an old dilapidated house there where an old man lived. And right there used to be an old milk machine. Do any of you guys remember the old milk machine? The buildings, those two big buildings right there, that's Continental Plaza. I believe the first building was built in '71. I was a little kid. I used to go playing there with my friends when they were constructing the buildings, riding the elevators up and down. Good times, man. You can't see it, but behind these apartments is the Home Depot strip mall, which used to be two guys back in the 1970s. As I said, this is where Pizza Town used to be. There is the footprint of the building of Pizza Town. Not there anymore. And over here, there's your Campbell Christie house right there. And as we start the pictures from the 1970s, I'm going to show you what that house looked like the day it was moved here, which was October 10th, 1977. I was a teenager and I was here with my camera snapping away. So now that you know what the area looks like now, it's time to go back in time to the 1970s. Are you guys ready? Let's have some fun. Welcome to my look back at Bergenfield Auto Parts in River Edge from the 1970s up until the 1990s. We're going to start off chronologically in the 70s, then go to the 80s, and lastly the 90s. So let's start with the 1970s when I was a kid. I was about 12 years old and I wandered into this place because I always loved cars. Originally, I went here with my friend, but he soon dropped out, so I would go alone. And eventually, I began working there part-time and then full-time. In this picture, you can see the man on the left was one of the four brothers who owned the place. His name was Art. This is his son, Scott. These are just a couple of random customers in the yard looking for parts. You can see it was during the fall season, as the leaves on the trees were starting to turn. Here is another look at the yard, looking straight down, and you can see on the right here is a good old E100. That shows how old this picture is. Nothing much going on right here, but in the old days, they had wheels laying all over the place. Once I got to be a little older, I came in and I sorted out all the wheels. These wheels had never been sorted out from when this place opened, when I'm not sure if that was the 40s or the 50s, but anyway, it was always here since before I was born. If you've been here before, I'm sure you'll recognize some familiar faces in this picture. On the left here is Barry, who took care of the transmissions. That's Scott. That's Gil. Gil was one of the four brothers who was one of the owners of the junkyard. As you can see, nothing much going on here, but all these pictures were taken in the fall, specifically in 1977, at least in this particular photo group. Here you can see I decided to climb up on the shed and take pictures from an aerial view. I'm really glad I did this because I got a couple of neat shots, if I do say so myself. Here you can see an overview of the yard and all the junk cars in it. And there's the wonderful E100 van again. And a good look at the trees turning color. This would be facing the opposite way. There was a small section of the yard that was fenced off to the regular customers where we kept specialty items, vehicles we were holding for people or whatever, or just special parking. This picture has a lot of good history in it, so pay attention. First of all, there's the junkyard itself. This was taken the same day as the first picture in the shot. As you can see, Art is still standing by the gate. Any of you guys who came to this junkyard would remember he was always a fixture sitting at the gate collecting money. There's Barry moseying along, a couple of customers. In the background, this is the old style, old school McDonald's. And this picture was taken in 1977 by me. And they didn't rehabilitate this one till well into the 1980s. On the left here, this was a barber shop. Some of you guys from the area may remember this. I used to actually get my hair cut in there. The guy was also a part-time bookie. And behind him was the Mercedes-Benz body shop. And right here turned out to be Innovation Luggage in later years. On the right, you can see part of DNC Amico. Looking from across the street, I took this shot of the building itself. Customers parking on the side. You can see just a hair of DNC Amico. There's a wider angle shot of the same thing. Same day, there's DNC Amico. That was owned by David Chong and Charlie LaMotta. Good people, knew them well. This picture was taken October 10th, 1977 by me. This was when they moved the historic Campbell Christie house from New Milford down here to River Edge. They made a huge thing of moving this. They closed the whole road down. They had to raise the traffic lights, and they brought the main structure of the house itself and eventually set it down back here. Then they rehabilitated the entire structure. It is now considered a historical landmark, and it's next to the von Steuben house and one other one. I think the Desmarest house is there too. Alrighty, let's continue on. Over the years, there were several times we attempted to have dogs in the yard. Here's one when he was a puppy. Of course, none of these dogs ever really seemed to work out. We went through several dogs, but none of them ever seemed to really work out. Here you can see where we kept our junk batteries, and every maybe once a month the battery guy would come in. His name was Gene, and he would pick up all the scrap batteries. Here's where I kept my trim rings. There was a sink on the right over here. My main hubcap section was in here. These are junk transmissions that were returned by customers that are no good and were probably going to be sold to the rebuilder. This picture I took down the back of the yard in what we called the cutting spot, where the cars were actually cut up. You can see rear ends on the right and on the left. There's your crane, main cutting spot right there. Somebody pulled in here with a pickup truck, I guess to pick something up. I don't know if you guys have noticed one commonality, but just about every picture I've showed you, and keep in mind, these pictures go over a span of 30 years. But just about every picture, our weather was cloudy and damp. Not too many sunny days here in the Northeast. It's something I've complained about for years. Here you can see some cars of yesteryear. A good old Chevy Vega, Mercury Capri, Datsun Z, and this old, which I believe was a 1954 wrecker. This was not ever put out on the road. It was just used in the yard itself for moving cars around and jockeying them. Once again, we have another cloudy day. Here you can see a pile of wheels. This is before I took over the wheel section and assorted everything and put everything in a really super neat order. But hopefully later in the video, I'll have a picture of that to show you. Here I got some hubcaps hanging on the side here. And yeah, let's keep going, man. Welcome to the 1980s. The following group of pictures all were taken in the 1980s, and I'll go over them with you so you can understand what's going on. I was standing once again on the roof of the drive shaft building, and you can see Barry is down here, that's Barry, cutting up a station wagon. This was in the summertime, as you can tell by the foliage. Early in 1980, I got this Mercury Grand Marquis here, the blue one, which was the heaviest car I've ever driven in my life. Smoothest riding car, terrible on gas, a mere 8 miles to the gallon. Here you can see Leonard had brought in this old Ford and was waiting to bring it into the yard. This is Chris's truck. This is the truck that they would take the scrap bodies out to this scrap guy and sell the parts for scrap metal. On the right side here is good old Pizza Town, which I'm sure many of you remember. Just another day in 1980. This is Art cutting up a Lincoln. Back in the early 80s, Art actually worked in the pit. But I guess approximately 85 or so, he just decided one day he had enough of it, and he would just sit up the front and collect money every day. This was his crane that he operated. There's another popular Chevy Vega. Can't get enough of Chevy Vegas. From another angle, this is Gilbert, the tire guy, standing here. That's Leonard's truck, his wrecker. And you got some assorted wheels and other goodies here. And of course, do I have to point it out to you? It's cloudy. This particular picture I took in 1982. And here you can see a couple of interesting things. On the left, D&C Amoco has been knocked down, and now one of these cheapy cut-rate gas stations is here. This is the junkyard building itself. This is a '69 Pontiac that I purchased from an older lady named Rose. Her husband was one of the owners of the place. She kept the car really good, but unfortunately I wrecked the car. This was really the worst accident I've ever had, and I will actually show you a picture of the wreck later in this video. This 1971 Cadillac was owned by Ann, one of the bookkeepers at the place. And we have another view. You can get a better look at the gas station right here. It looks similar to this today, but not exactly. I think it's a Delta. It's the green gas station. Whatever the green sign is, that's what it is today. You would think I would know it. And look over here. A Chevy Vega. Who would have thought? Barry, down the back working. There's that same Lincoln that I showed you earlier that Art was working on. Here you can see a pile of transmissions and various wrecked cars and the customary Chevy Vega. From another angle, I'm standing by the tire machine here. This is Gil's area where he worked. Assorted wheels. That's my hubcap section over there. Here is the picture that I promised you earlier of my wrecked '69 Pontiac. This was, to this day, the worst accident I've ever been in my life. If you're really good, look right here. My head hit the windshield doing 55 miles an hour. And yes, I was injured, I don't mind telling you. I rear-ended a guy. Now, that sounds bad in itself, but it wasn't. I'm minding my own business, driving on the highway. This old man, the guy had to be 80 years old, pulls right out in front of me and actually comes to a dead stop on the highway. I saw him. I tried to swerve to the left, cleared some of them, but not all of them, and I blasted that van in the rear end full speed, as you can see. And that was the end of my '69 Pontiac. His van held up a little bit better, though. And this was taken in 1982. 1982. Let's proceed through the timeline now. Okay, guys, it's time for our first intermission. And I'm going to tell you my first in a series of junkyard stories. I could stay here all night telling you so many of the interesting stories that happened between the 1970s and the mid-1990s. However, I'm going to spare you that agony, and I'm only going to tell you a few that I think are really, really memorable. So the first story this evening is going to be the Great Food Fight of 1977. Now, I'm sure when you guys were kids, you would watch TV shows, comedies, movies that involved a huge food fight, and you would always wonder if that could happen in real life. One of the movies that comes to mind right off the top of my head is Blazing Saddles with Mel Brooks in 1974. I remember that. I was a kid in school at the time. Very good movie, and I liked it a lot. And I always wondered if food fights could actually occur. And I can tell you unequivocally, they can. So here is my story about the Great Food Fight of 1977. It was the summer of 1977, and for those of you who are my age or even close, you will remember that the summer of '77 was also the summer of the infamous New York City blackout and the Son of Sam. It was a very concerning time, and people were nervous. People had hair-trigger tempers. Anything could set anybody off at any time. So that being said, I was only a teenager, and one day during the summertime I was working at the junkyard, and it was lunchtime. So at the time there was quite a few people working there, and people would basically take turns going up for lunch. So somebody who had a car volunteered to go up to Burger King. So all of us wrote down what we wanted, gave in our money, and the person went up and got the food. So the person came back with the food, let's just say for argument's sake 12:30 p.m., lunchtime. The food's being given out and everybody's in the office. It's crowded, and I do mean crowded, because back in the late 70s, they actually had quite a few people working there, as opposed to the mid-90s when it was a skeleton crew. But anyhow, the food's just being given out, and it so happens somebody called on the phone for me, a customer. So I'm talking to the customer, and my coworkers, if you guys have ever met any of them in your life, you know that these guys love to break balls. They love to play practical jokes. It was real funny as long as you didn't do it back to them. But they would love to break balls in any conceivable manner. So I'm on the phone trying to talk to this customer, and Art was sitting right next to me. I was standing by the phone. Art was sitting next to me, and he's grabbing my pants, trying to undo them and pull them down, because that was his idea of a funny joke. And as quick as he's doing it, my free hand, which was not holding the phone, was pulling them back up. And I'm starting to get irritated more and more. It's getting to the point where I think I'm going to lose it. I continue talking to the customer on the phone, and finally Art stops just beyond the penultimate moment when I'm about to lose it. And another guy comes up and pulls my pants down. This one was Dean. You haven't met him yet in the videos, or the pictures rather, but you'll see him later on. And that was when I lost it. I had in my hand a Whopper with cheese, a beautiful Whopper with cheese. And I took it with all my might and I slung it at him. He wasn't that far away from me, but he saw it coming and he ducked right at the right time. It just clipped his hair. And who does it hit? It hits Barry right in the face. Barry was sitting, he was sitting there, and it hits him splat right in his face. And he goes absolutely crazy. He was about to bite into his Whopper, and he took his Whopper and he threw it at me. And it hit me. And then all hell just broke loose. I mean, I don't know why everybody else got involved in the fight, but they did. There were French fries flying all over the place, Whoppers, hamburgers, you name it, it was airborne. I had more Whopper on my white t-shirt than anywhere else. I looked a mess. It's one of those crazy things you could not plan. It just happened. That, my friends, was the great food fight of 1977. Let's get back to the junkyard video now. The following group of pictures were pictures that I took between the year 1983 and 1985. Here you can see we were beginning to have a major snowstorm. Back in the 1980s, we would get so many snowstorms where it was a foot and a half. It was just commonplace. The green van was Barry's van, and the yellow 79 Dodge St. Regis was my car. It was an ex-police car that I bought, and I figured I would get a good deal because it had 100,000 miles. So I figured that they took care of their car. I bought it cheap, but it turned out to be nothing but a money pit. Here is another look at my St. Regis. This time I have it parked around the back by what is known as the Campbell Christie lot. Scott bought a brand new Eldorado, and here you can see the Eldorado right here with Scott standing next to it. This was Chris's truck here, which he kept immaculate. Here's another look at Scott's Eldorado, clean as a whistle. Speaking of Scott, that's him right there on the telephone talking to a customer, hopefully. For those of you guys who ever wanted to see me when I was young, here's your chance. There are no pictures of me as a kid. None were ever taken. But here I am. I made it into my 20s. And this is what I look like working at the junkyard in my domain. Here's another shot of me waiting to answer a phone. That's Leonard. He was the oldest of the four brothers. And he was the top man. He was the president of Bergenfield Auto Parts.
top of the line, head honcho. His word was law. His job was to drive the wrecker, and he also took care of the books and any legal matters or anything requiring paperwork went to Leonard. If the town was giving trouble because of whatever, it went to Leonard. He handled everything. The lady next to him is Ann Colano, a secretary. This is Chris. I mentioned him earlier. His job was to drive that truck and take the stripped out car bodies to Parkway Iron and Metal on Route 46. I hope you've noticed, and I've mentioned this about 5 times so far in the video, that it's like cloudy every day here. Well, I'm sure you recognize the gentleman right here. This is Barry. To the left is Art. To the right is Corey, who's Barry's younger brother. He didn't work all that long at the junkyard, basically from 83 to 85, if my memory serves correctly. And back then, I gotta be honest, the place was pretty darn well run. Everybody had an assigned job, something they had to take care of, and they were held responsible for it. Everybody did their own part in the early days. But as people got older, some people quit, and some just didn't want to work anymore. It's like unbelievable. Here's a picture of the lot in the wintertime. Built up snow. This was taken on a different day, by the way. Here, this was taken on a Saturday. I took this picture. There's the old Amoco station. And that means it had to be in the early 80s, of course. And as you can see, everybody's basically standing around doing nothing. No less than 4 employees in this picture. And nobody's doing anything. Because it was a Saturday. And there was a basic unwritten rule on Saturday that nobody was to do any work whatsoever. You were supposed to stay up front and handle customers as they came in. Because truthfully, back in the late 70s when I was young and I started there, the place was really busy on Saturday and they needed all hands on deck. But once the 80s came, Saturdays slowed up considerably, but they never changed their method of operation. And that's something that always made me shake my head in disbelief. Okay guys, welcome to 1986. And here I am on the telephone talking to a customer. This picture of me was taken by Scott. And here I am again on the same day, hamming it up for the camera. You'll notice the truck is half loaded with scrap cars that are getting ready to go out to Parkway Iron and Metal. This is Dean. He was the parts guy. If you came into the junkyard and needed to buy something and had no tools and were willing to pay extra, he would take the part off for you. There's another picture of Dean at work. Here's a group shot. This man over here is Elmer Pratt. He was a laborer at the back of the yard during the later years. There's Dean again. That's Scott. That's a customer named Brian McCarseat. We actually had an unbelievably rare sunny day in 1986. I wasn't planning on doing a photo shoot, but I convinced Scott to take some pictures of me, and I also took some candid pictures myself. Scott took that one of me. I took this one. You can see that they're backing the truck out with the scrap cars on it to go to the scrap yard. That's Gilbert poking his head out there. And there they've got the truck backed out into the street, and it's going to be on its way to the scrap yard. Okay, folks, it's time for another intermission, which means it's time for another junkyard story, torn from the annals of time. Today, I take you back to 1986. To one of the craziest things that ever happened in all my years at the junkyard. From time to time, there would be trouble when we had to call the PD. But this one time stands out more than any other. So here's what happened. It was in the winter of 1986. It was a Thursday afternoon, it was cold, and it was about 3 o'clock p.m. I happened to be standing in front of the building by the office, and I heard something, and I turned around and I saw Chris. Chris was the guy who drives the big truck. And Chris was coming out, and a customer approached him, and the customer was holding a side view mirror, which if you look at the car in your picture here, this is a side view mirror. Now, this is a power mirror, and the one the customer had in his hand was complete, but the customer wanted to try to pry out the mirror section, thereby ruining the entire mirror. So Chris told him he could not pry out the glass, that he had to purchase the whole mirror for whatever he was charging back then, and he could take it home, do whatever he wants with it. But no way would he let him pry out the mirror, which was policy, totally reasonable. The customer started getting loud and grabs the mirror, and Chris grabbed it back out of the customer's hand. The customer then, with no provocation or warning, winds up and belts Chris right in the face with a right hook. And I saw this myself. And for a moment, I stood there frozen. I was shocked. I said, did I just see that? All hell then broke loose. Another employee who happened to be in the area closer than me ran up and tried to stop the fight. So this customer, it so happens, was an expert in martial arts. And he starts throwing a series of karate kicks and chops at these employees with no provocation. And this guy was definitely out of control. And I hear screaming and yelling, and I go running into the fray. And Chris says to me, Joe, go into the office and call the police. Hurry up. So, okay, I can see the situation's getting out of hand. I hear screaming and yelling. Somebody got thrown into the fence with a loud crash. I pick up the phone, and in 1986, we didn't have 911. So I called River Edge Police directly, got the officer at the desk, and said, it's Joe from the junkyard. And the cop's like, oh yeah, hey, what's up? I said, listen, we have a crazy person. He's assaulting the employees. He's totally out of control. Please send help at once. And the officer said, no problem. I'll send a car right to you. I said, no. Don't send one car. Send every available man. Please trust me on this. This guy's out of control. And the cops knew me because they had been there before on other things. They bought their parts there. And they knew I was a straight shooter. So they sent 4 police cars rolling down. In the meantime, the fight continues to escalate, and it's carried across the street into Pizza Town's lot. And all the customers in Pizza Town migrated over to those big windows in the front of the place, if you remember the way it used to look. And everybody's watching the fight, which has now segued over to Pizza Town's lot. The police cars arrive shortly thereafter, and this guy was still out of control. Out of control to the point that the cops pulled out their nightsticks. I thought maybe they were going to have to club him. But they finally got him to calm down. They took his statement, and they put him in the back of the police car. And they took him up to the police station. Now, I thought that was the end of it, right? But it wasn't. You won't believe what happened the next day, Friday. The next day, at approximately, let's say, 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, police come back with this crazy man. And he wants to press charges against us, saying we assaulted him first, which is insane. So the cops had everybody, all the employees in the office, and they said to the crazy customer, all right, who assaulted you? I want you to point them out. And he starts pointing to each employee down the line. And he would say either, yes, he assaulted me, or no, he was watching. Well, when they got to me, he said, no, he was watching, because I hadn't actually assaulted the guy. But the other guys who did assault him were only doing so in self-defense. So he took names of about maybe 4 or 5 employees. And the customer said he wanted to press charges. And the cop said to us, well, listen, he can press if he wants, but you guys can press right on back. Well, so we were all set to go to court to fight this nut job, but nothing ever came of it. And let me tell you, this story was retold, and Chris always remembers to this day, well, not to this day because everybody's basically deceased, but Chris always remembered hearing me call the River Edge Police Department and telling them to send as many cars as they possibly could. You should have heard Chris retell this story. He would say, you should have seen Joey. He was on the phone. He was saying, don't send one cop. Send everybody. Send as many cars as you have. The story was epic. Absolutely epic. As I alluded to earlier, unfortunately, just about everybody I've been showing you or telling you is now deceased because they were all older people at the time, with the exception of myself, Scott, I believe Elmer Pratt is still alive, and Barry. I don't believe anybody else is still with us. Now, let's see the junkyard in the 1990s. The following photographs were taken by me on December 13th, 1992, the day of the big nor'easter here in northern New Jersey. This was the first time in a really long time we had serious flooding. Who knew that in the years to come we would experience storms, one after the other, even worse than this? But let's take a look at what we see here in the photograph. Here you can see a River Edge police car. They were using Chevy Caprices back then. Has the roadway blocked off. You can't see it behind this Honda, but you will later in a later picture. They don't want people going down there because the Hackensack River is seriously overflowing and everything is basically at a standstill, as you will see. Here you can see the Hackensack River has flooded all the way from back here, come all the way out here, and it's just about impassable. I've got my car parked over here. In the year 1992, I was driving a 1980 Cadillac Fleetwood. And that's my car there. This is Barry's van. That is Nick's Honda, Scott's Wrecker. And that's Art's Oldsmobile. Here you can see I am talking to this Asian guy here. What happened is he's the driver of this car right here. He attempted to go through the flood on Hackensack Avenue and the car died. So he left his car there, came over and asked me if I could recommend someone to tow him out on the busiest towing day of the year. This is the yard itself. Never in my life had I seen the actual yard get flooded. I've seen the streets get flooded many times, but not the actual junkyard itself flooded. Here's my 1980 Cadillac, which, by the way, I bought off Leonard, who was the owner of the junkyard. This was a really clean Cadillac. I got a good deal on it. I paid, I think it was $1,200 back then. It was really mint, and I used it for quite a while. And as you can see, everything is flooded out. You can see the demarcation line right here, how far the water has progressed. Again, a scene where the junkyard itself is totally flooded out. And I'm telling you, I really thought this was going to be a once-in-a-lifetime storm. But, you know, live and learn. There's another view. Wheels are flooded, hubcaps are flooded, everything is flooded. And here are the barricades I mentioned earlier. Remember I said the cop put them up so people couldn't drive down there? It doesn't look bad right here, but trust me, around the corner, it was bad. It was very bad. And that's Barry's van and Nick's Honda, and the road is flooded. And as I said, this was the end of the year 1992. I myself left the junkyard in April of 1994 to open my own place. And so did Scott, for that matter. In fact, we both left on the same day, coincidentally, which left only about 4 or 5 people left, and they were all older people. The only people left would have been Leonard, Art, and Art passed away a few years after that. Barry stayed, and somebody else. But it was nothing like the old days with all the fun we used to have. It was just crazy. So guys, that is it for this particular video. What I'd like to know, do you remember any funny stories that you can relate about any of the guys I work with, or even me? If so, put them in the comment section. Any memories about the junkyard at all, put them in the comment section. If you would like me to make more videos talking about crazy junkyard stories that actually happened to me from 1970 something all the way up to 1994, put that in the comment section. And I'd like to thank you guys for watching this video. It was a lot of work to put this all together. I was putting it off for a long time. I figured I better do it now, and it's done. Thank you for watching. Rock on and peace.